Hi everyone, Steve here. Welcome to this edition of Monday Morning Musings. We are going to continue on with Paul's use of soma or body. Now, while Paul doesn't denigrate the body the way the Greek philosophers do, he does put certain constraints or limits on our understanding of the body. And in this episode, I'm just going to quickly go through some of the constraints, limits, qualifiers that he uses when he uses the term body. Now, the first thing is that the body is mortal. It is corruptible. It is susceptible to death. So it is not what we would call a transfigured or glorified body or a multidimensional body or a quantum physics body at this time. So that's one thing. Paul's very clear about that. It is mortal. The second thing that Paul says about the body, again, not despising it, but describing it, is that it is weak. And the body is the sphere, the arena in which death and sin operate. Death and sin don't reside in the body. That it should be, it's the enemy. You know, the body's the enemy. And it not only is it the enemy, but the Greeks would say, you know, it's a disgusting thing that has no eternal value, and there's no honor associated with the body. No, it is weak, it is vulnerable, and it is the arena in which death and sin operate. The body is and can become the instrument for the manifestation of death and sin, but in itself, it is the gift of God, and it is not to be despised. The third thing that Paul says about the body is that it must be, there's language I don't like to use because the terms insinuate inferiority, but sometimes language fails. It must be kept in subjection. It must be mastered. I like to use the idea, the metaphor of a train on the rails. There's nothing negative about asking a train to stay on the rails. There's nothing subjecting or domineering or demeaning about asking a train to stay on the tracks. The tracks are what enable the train to bring forth all its train-like virtues. And so that's the same idea when Paul refers to the body. So when he talks about keeping it under subjection or ruling it or mastering it, don't allow that kind of negative, degrading sort of spin to creep in there. That's not what it means. It means it's a valuable, integrated part of being a human being, but it only fulfills its higher purpose when it is kept under subjection. Another thing that Paul says about the body, and this would have offended all his Greek hearers, all of the Greek philosophy of his culture and his day, and including some of his own people who didn't believe in the resurrection, is that it can be redeemed. Our mortal body is included in redemption, not only in the by and by when we get a glorified body. I'm not going to get into that, but that classic verse in 2 Corinthians where it says that the life of Jesus might be made manifest in our mortal bodies. There's nothing demeaning or degrading about our bodies in that kind of sentence. See, that the body, it can be an instrument of the life of Jesus, or it can be an instrument of death and sin. And the difference is, what's the difference? How do you get to the difference? Is that wonderful passage in Romans chapter 12. The body must be consecrated, otherwise dedicated to something other than itself, ego, and passions. Present, therefore, your body as a living sacrifice, which is your reasonable worship. Your King James service is kind of unfortunate because it makes it sound like some sort of duty that you're performing. No, present your entire being as something dedicated or consecrated to the purposes of God. And in those 4 or 5 qualifiers, Paul tries to frame how the body fits in with the bigger picture of a psychological view of humanity without going into Greek metaphysics and the idea of different parts and different parts of your body being here and there in time and space. And I'll see you the next time.